it for my wins. I need my ends. This life is real. I get it in. I get it in.
What's up, people? Welcome to the Flex. Welcome to Bill Leckie. I really wanted to do this piece of content, this catch up, this conversation. Why we're doing it as well. Is to tackle what needs to be tackled and have these conversations that need to be had. And I want to start by saying I appreciate that Bill's taken the time to come on and have his say about the piece that was written. Just to give you guys a quick backstory, there was a piece written in the Scottish Sun, kind of addressing Sky Sports, but addressing myself as well. And you guys saw my response to that, and it kind of blew up from there. But I think it's important to put feelings of my anger and frustration aside to actually have this conversation. So I think this is a big moment. So Bill, I appreciate you coming on to kind of have this discussion, first of all.
Yeah, I've been really looking forward to actually, Flex. It's good to see you. First of all, I want to apologise because I think there's been a lot of noise around about this. The thing that's really got to me is how I would have felt if I was you. And I think if I'm getting this right, I wouldn't have liked someone when I was on my way up to write a piece saying that I really didn't deserve to be on the platform that I was on, right? And in doing that, I don't think it was helpful to anybody. I think it was pretty disrespectful to you. And when I've thought back about it, it's just, I like to think that I've worked a long time at getting my words right, but I got my words wrong on this occasion. My words let me down. And the only good thing out of it is to be able to come and talk to you now and just see where we go.
Was you surprised by like the reaction that the article got, not just from the Black community, but from fellow journalists and everyone in between, just in general? Like, was you surprised that actually this thing blew up and became this?
Surprised? No, I don't think. No, I don't. Well, yeah, I put it this way: I didn't have any intent when I wrote it. There was no intent towards you. I had an issue which we might come on to, might not,
yeah, we will, yeah.
about Sky Sports News and the way they're handling some issues just now. Listen, I've apologised to you for what I did. Once it became clear to me how that article read to other people, no, I wasn't surprised. Now, I've had people saying to me, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with what you wrote," and I've had people saying, "That's absolutely appalling what you wrote." So, no, I'm not surprised. On reflection, yeah. I'm not surprised at all, no.
Yeah, I think for me, it was, as I read it and the words that were in it and the way that the words were put together, I couldn't come to any other assumption other than that, like I was saying to you before, like someone who looks like me, who sounds like me, basically didn't have the right to be there on merit. And I see that's what you're apologizing for. But when I look at, like, when you went to say, like, he's a DJ and a social media junkie, like these type of words, I was like, surely I don't think you could have done like any research on me, like as an individual. I feel like you just looked at something that was face value, because I couldn't understand how you came to those, do you know what I mean? Those assumptions.
Yeah, the way, when I wrote that little piece, sometimes, as I say, sometimes you write a piece and something just gets you. For anybody that hasn't seen it, on my page on a Wednesday in the sports page, I write 3 columns a week for the paper, 2 in the news pages, 1 in the sports pages. That's one was on the sports pages. The main piece is 800-900 words. Then there's 2 little bits off the side. This was one of the little bits off the side. They tend to be things that happen on the day that kind of either make you happy, make you sad, make you angry, blah, blah, blah. The Sky Sports thing, I think, on reflection, I probably tried to distill too complex an argument into too small and flippant a piece. You were not, if you can see what I mean, when I was writing it, you weren't relevant to the piece, as in if it had been you, if it had been Sheridan Smith, if it had been Tony Blair, it wouldn't have mattered, right? It was the point I was making was about Sky. I can absolutely see why you've got so upset about it on, as I say, on reflection. But at the time, it wasn't about you, if you see what I mean.
I struggled to see that at the time because obviously all the things you were saying were to do with me,
and that's why I completely understand that. But it would have been the same whoever Sky Sports News had used in that slot at the time. If you get what I mean.
That's the thing that, again, see, if for me, Bill, I'm a person who I always take a step back. Yeah. So when I actually first read the article, my friends will tell you I laughed. And when I mean laughed, I don't mean laughed in I found it really funny. I meant in terms of it seems like mainstream media don't want the YouTubers to be here, and here. They don't want us to live in this space. And I have that kind of discussion. I don't want to call it an argument because it is a discussion. That's an opinion. No problem with that opinion at all. I would always argue why I think content creators from the YouTube space can now intertwine with the mainstream media. I think that's a generational thing. I think the landscape's changing. I have no problem having that discussion. But the reason why I struggle to process that in terms of this article is because I struggled to see what the point was until certain language was used. So when you took it to the last paragraph and used the term racial equality is a tad tedious, etc., and made it that, I probably wouldn't. Okay. Sorry, go on.
You know that I didn't say racial equality is tedious. I said Sky Sports uses tactics on it. I think there is nothing tedious about racial equality, and we'll come on to that, right?
Yeah. Okay.
My argument here is with Sky Sports News, but you are right. And one of the things that I've over the last it's been 3 weeks, whatever, right? Trust me, this has occupied every day of my life since then, thinking about this, thinking about the repercussions of it, etc. And you're absolutely right. I've got no right to say that a YouTuber, a DJ, whatever, shouldn't be on Sky Sports News. As I say, listen, I write 250,000, 300,000 words for the paper every year. You're going to get it wrong sometimes, yeah. And I've got it wrong on that occasion. And I'm not being blasé about that. I'm just saying that it's a fact that there's no reason why a YouTuber or a DJ or whatever. My point at the time was, again, for anybody that's not read it, was, again, this is old school journalism speaking here, right? Is that at Sky Sports News have the show as the transfer show. And I'm thinking, all right, we're going to find out some news about transfers. But what we found out in that morning was people's thoughts about where they think. You were talking about Jesse Lingard that morning, about how, I think the way I wrote about your thoughts on that was pretty disrespectful, and I totally accept that. And I can see why. There is the mainstream media v new media thing is a big discussion, right? But there's absolutely, as I say, when I was, put it this way, I still get people, having written columns in the news pages of the Scottish Sun for 20 years nearly, I still get people saying, stick to the sports pages where you belong. So I get what you're at there, and I get really angry when people say that to me. So I've got no right to say that to you.
Yeah, I see. I'm just looking at the connection here. It's a little bit. It's really fuzzy. It's quite annoying. It's coming in and out, but I think we'll keep rolling with it. Yeah, it's your end, but we'll.
No, but I mean, it's maybe just me. I'm just old and fuzzy. You know what I mean?
Oh no, it's not that. It's not that. It's definitely the connection.
Yeah, cool.
Well, that's kind of going on to the next kind of part of this, Bill. Is I think what it was the point you was trying to make then, because if it, what did you want to turn on the TV and see? That's what I'm still struggling now to understand.
Right. I don't want to say let's just get past this, the thing I wrote, but let's try and get past that little article I wrote, because it's a badly written article about a subject that I've mentioned 2 or 3 times over the last 6 or 7 months what I think about the way Sky Sports have handled, in particular, the race issue. But this article itself, I mean, I want to try and get past the article itself, because I've just said to you it was wrong. I got it wrong. If I was writing again tomorrow, in fact, I wouldn't write it again tomorrow, to be quite honest, right? Because it was knee jerk and it was wrong. So that's that. I think not just at Sky Sports News. I think there's a lot of, in mainstream media, there's a lot of gesture politics going on just now. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think some people are doing things because they feel they have to, right? And I don't think they're getting it right. And I'll be doing somersaults and doing laps of honour when right across the country, in the media, in politics, everywhere, there's equality and diversity, and everybody's included, and everybody gets the job they deserve. But I think sometimes what's happening is you put people out front, and you think, well, we've done our bit, and I'm not quite sure that's enough.
Do
You know,
you,
I'm
so
not
what?
trying to say you shouldn't be on TV. That's the way it comes across. I'm not saying that at all. What I really think is it doesn't go far enough. I don't think it's enough just to say. I mentioned in the piece that during the summer Sky Sports, and again, I don't want to just labour on Sky Sports, but they get rid of guys like Charlie Nicholas, Phil Thompson, Matt Letizia, right? And it felt as if they were making a very major statement on where they wanted, in a very short space of time, their profile to go. Now that's their decision. And again, maybe I'm wrong to pick them up on it. But I think I would like to think that there'd be more of a statement if right across the board that at the people who run football as a whole, the people who run football clubs, at the people who run TV stations and newspapers and everywhere, if the diversity we're looking for was everywhere and not just put out front as a kind of show.
But at the start of something changing, because for me, this is all about change, right? And this is all about representation across the board. And like you're alluding to there, equal chances to be given, not because they feel they have to. I understand that.
Yes.
And I'm not just talking about Sky, I'm talking about all big organizations. Yeah. So we agree on that. But for something to happen or impact change, something needs to happen. So what's worse? These organizations doing nothing. So if I put for example, if I'd not been on Sky Sports News for whatever reason, whether it's merit or because they were trying to do something that you feel that they feel pressured into, whichever reason, you would never have known who I am, and I would never have had that platform to see. Now, I'm not saying that I've been made by Sky Sports, because I haven't. The reason why they've asked me to go on Sky Sports on a personal is because of the work. Yeah, it's because of the work that I've done by myself in my own right away from Sky Sports that's made them see that he is good enough to come and fit the bill, regardless of his color, of his culture, whatever it is. Yeah. But what I'm saying is what's worse? These companies not beginning to give opportunity, and it is always going to seem like at a time where it's like a token gesture, or oppressing it where it's like, well, we're just not going to do anything. Like, what balance are you looking for there then?
Well, it's not the balance that I'm looking for. I think we go in mainstream media, which is obviously the media that you're part of, right? The YouTube media, social media, is moving forward so much faster than anybody can comprehend, right? So
is that a problem? That the others won't catch up or refusing to catch up?
No, I think it's a brilliant thing, right? And maybe sometimes things like this that we're doing is what people like me, who have been in the zone that I'm in for 40 years or so, maybe I go, actually, do you know what? This is brilliant. In fact, I was. I don't know if you have. Have you read Akala's book, Natives?
No.
No, right, okay. Akala's book, Natives, talks about when there was no opportunities for grime artists and stuff, and then suddenly, there you are. They're online. There's a channel for you. We're not going to judge you. We're not going to make you go through A&R men. And suddenly there's poof, it's out there, and suddenly there's a British grime scene that the Americans could understand, you know, and I thought, oh, this is the same as that. It came back into my head, and I thought, what I'm saying here, they shouldn't be. I think the way my piece came across was, you haven't earned the right, blah blah blah. But what is the right, you know? So what is my right to say you haven't earned the right? So, and that, I think you're absolutely bang on. You know, your side of things is moving so much faster than our side of things is. You know, we're sometimes struggling to keep up, and we're trying to change. The mainstream media is trying to change. and they're not going to get it right all the time. And I'm part of mainstream media, and I'm criticising another part of mainstream media, and maybe what we're getting to now tells me that I've had, and I'm not saying it tells me I have to rethink. Over the last 3 weeks, I have rethought an awful lot of stuff about how I feel about this. So that's a good.
I think it's a generational thing. What you basically saying? I was just picking up on what you're saying, like with the grime artist situation, where they basically had their own place.
Yeah.
Is that? Do you mean as in that should happen?
No,
like
no.
This, like there should be a channel that.
No, because I think what's happened there is that when there's suddenly a place to go, because for so long to try to get into mainstream music, theatre, cinema, it's just not happening. And then suddenly guys like Akala and Loki and Wiley and Giggs and whoever else suddenly get a platform to go on, and from there they then cross into the mainstream where they should be. Where they want to be, wherever they want to be. But it sometimes takes. So you go onto YouTube, you build up a following. Now there are people who there'll be people of my age, my generation, in the mainstream media who'll say, not even talk about you. I remember about 3 or 4 years ago, my daughter coming out to me and saying, "This Christmas, this time she was 15 or whatever. This Christmas, all I want is Dan and Phil stuff. I want Dan and Phil." And I went, "Who's Dan and Phil?" And then I look on, and Dan and Phil have got 9 million followers or something, So there's a whole world out there that my generation are suddenly. I'm talking my generation as if I'm 3 million years old, but that we're suddenly having to learn about and catch up on. And you're a guy who's gone on there and built a following. I mean, I'm saying that I write for the biggest selling paper in Scotland. We'll be selling whatever it is, 175,000, whatever it is a day, which means you're getting read by maybe 300,000. And I'm thinking I've got a big platform for my stuff. And then I look at guys like you, and you're blowing people out the water, and that suddenly comes as a big wow, sometimes. And then I'll throw in something like I threw into the paper, and it all comes back on top of me. And I realise, it's not other people that are wrong for getting angry about this. It's me that's wrong for being reactionary in that way. And that's a good thing for me. That's a good learning thing for me. I like that.
Do you think that, like, from this, because I think a lot of people could be watching this, right, and they could be saying, "Oh, why are you not saying this? So why are you allowing this?" What? For me, like I've said from the start, right, I wanted this to not be just about me. Like I could have just said nothing about this, and then we wouldn't have got to this point. And likewise, you could have chose not to come here. Do you think that, like, not just from this, because it needs bigger organizations that are way bigger than me and you, I understand that, but from like the journalistic point of view, and it is I agree with you. I do think it's a generational thing. I think there's a certain generation of people that, like you said, when you were a new journalist, when you were trying to come up, there were journalists there when you try and have your say or whatever, then they would just kind of just think, "Who are you?" Do you think that can start to change? Like, what do you think would change from not just this happening, but in general, like personally?
I think if people aren't willing to embrace change on so many fronts now, I think mainstream media, newspapers. If you look at I know newspapers. I don't know TV. I've been on TV and all that stuff. I don't know TV. I know newspapers inside out, right? And we newspapers across the board have tried to embrace the internet, and I'm not quite sure everybody's quite got it bang on yet on how to do an internet version of your newspaper. They don't know they're not sure whether to monetize, whether not to monetize, whether to paywall, not paywall, and it's taken a long time for the mainstream to come quite a short way in comparison to the distance YouTubers and other social media influencers have come in a very short time, right? And if we're not willing to realize that and embrace it, then we've got, I think, a major problem. Now, how, it's beyond me to decide how that gets embraced and how we learn and how we absorb new techniques into old techniques, but I think it has to happen.
Yeah, it does. I think that's the biggest thing I've seen from it, and I don't want to keep alluding back to the article because, like you said, we kind of want to move away from it.
No, but that's what it's about. That's what this is about.
Yeah,
right?
that's what it's about. And that is like, I just thought it really could have been just that argument that we're not moving forward, or I don't think that they should be there because the YouTubers are YouTubers and not mainstream journalists. They haven't gone to university, studied journalism. They haven't had the backstory.
By the way, neither have I.
Oh, there you go. So exactly, there you go. So we've got more in common than you think, and that's one thing I thought as well. You've got more in common than we think in terms of when you're starting out trying to make it, and people are trying to hold you down, regardless of your race, color, or whatever. So again, I don't want to go back to it, but the language, I'm just baffed. I'm just baffled because I'm like, I know you're really good with words, and I know you've been in the game a long time, and I just thought, how could it be meant any other way? Which obviously you've cleared up, but that was my thing on it. I was like, it can't be meant any other way.
We're both baffled in this, right? So, sometimes you just have sometimes footballers make a terrible back pass, and next thing, and the internet blows up calling them for everything, and that's what I've done. I've made a hospital pass here with this, right? It's one of, and you have to deal with the consequences. And then you have to move on. And if you go out the next week and you make another hospital pass, then there's nobody else to blame but yourself, is there? So you got to go, what do I learn out of this? I say, well, learn. Don't. I mean, I'll still go in to again, using a football analogy, every week when I write a column, I'll go into the tackles, right? I'll go in to every 50-50, and I'm not going to start pulling out because of what's happened here. But I think there's a little bit of you just start to think, right, who am I actually aiming for here, and who's actually going to get caught? Who's going to get caught with the flack? And you kind of got caught with the flack in this, which was not my intention. But whether it was my intention or not, it was blatantly obvious that's what happened.
From away from that, then, like you said, away from the article, on the bigger scale, what are you trying to? What point are you trying to raise to the big organizations? Is it that, like you said, you think that they're doing things because they feel they have to, so they're not necessarily getting the right people for the right job? Is it the fact that you don't like the new type of content that's being put on these platforms? Is it what is the point, your fundamental point you're trying to make?
The fundamental point is that I think, and it's a complex thing to try and argue, I think, in current times, but I think there's a lot of gesture decisions, a lot of gesture thoughts going on that I'm not entirely sure are making a long-term difference. I think, I mean, let me ask you a question. Where are you on taking a knee?
I believe that taking a knee now is becoming less prominent for what it stands for. And I think that at the beginning of it, I think people tried to mix political messages and things out of just actually people has taken a stand for what's right. Similar to why we're doing this. I don't believe in doing what's easy. I believe in doing what's right. So I think it's right to take a stand from it. But so I was under no illusion, which ironically I did do a piece on Sky saying that. So this was at the beginning when there was Black Lives Matters on the back of the shirts. I'm saying that's great to raise awareness right now in this moment, in this time. That will need to come to an end because we're not asking for favoritism. We're asking for the same. So, but more needs to happen at the top in terms of representation and stuff, not just going out and kneeling or not just going out and putting the names on.
So that's my point, right? Is more needs to happen at the top. It's not just about gestures. So for instance, there are, and I know, there are people taking the knee every week in football who have a racist past. And they're taking a knee because if they don't take a knee, they'll get hammered for it. And then you had the situation in the rugby the other week where Scotland, England, do we take the knee? Do we not? So 4 guys take the knee. So the Scotland players up here absolutely getting mullered for being disrespectful and taking the knee. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. Why is it suddenly on them to be the people who change everything just by going down on one knee? It's
are they being asked to change everything, or are they being asked to show a symbol of solidarity to say, okay, we are now actively thinking about this. The people that can
Okay.
actually change it, like you're saying, and I agree.
Yeah.
The people that can change it are the people that aren't affected by it.
Yeah.
You see
So,
what I mean?
but for instance, here's a question as well. Why it seems to be football? It seems to be sports people who have been asked to do it. Why not on a building site in the morning before you start your shift? Everybody take a knee. You know, it seems to be only if a foot, and it's becoming now very pressurised on sports people. We've seen it in cricket, we've seen it in rugby, we've seen it in foot. Are you taking the knee? Are you not taking the knee? As if they do it, everything's okay. As long as every sports person takes the knee, then that's all right. It's like the clapping for the NHS. If you go and clap for the NHS, nurses don't want you to clap for them. They want a pay rise. Do you know what I mean? So
I see where you're coming from with that, and then my answer to that is thinking of it how the people who have put this in place would be is thinking how can we spread this message fastest, strongest in terms of football is the most watched sport in the country. Sportsmen are there in the country, or you see in actors and singers and stuff putting posts up, doing stuff. They're going to the places that are going to spread that message as powerful as possible and as quickly as possible. And I agree to a certain point that only change can happen when people start doing things. And I don't mean like gestures. I get that. But how does that transfer into so that actually is a separate argument, which I can accept that how long do you need before you say no, don't do it anymore? It's all about the action behind the closed doors. I understand that because me as a black person seeing the gestures that are done week in, week out, but the players are still being racially abused on Twitter.
Yeah, and
the knee's not doing anything. Like I get that.
And how many black owners or chief executives are there of football clubs? 100%. I can think of Les Ferdinand.
And mate, I think that's probably it. That's all I can know of.
Yeah.
But
so again, who's making the decisions?
I agree.
But
then I'm thinking, because that same argument about the representation behind the scenes, I believe if there was different representation of black or ethnic minorities in this situation, what we're in, I don't think that article would ever have got put out. Do you know what I mean? I think if there's more people who look like me round the table, if you're just being honest, then someone's going to take a look at that and go, actually, Bill, you might want to have a look at this. This probably isn't the way. So you're right. That's been my point all along, the representation, but the opportunity should still be given. Yeah,
if I can, one of the things about living in Scotland is I'm not saying there's not a racist problem in Scotland, because it's a racist problem everywhere. But our poison up here is sectarianism, right? And religious bigotry up here is cancerous, especially in football between Rangers and Celtic, right? And you have to be so aware of every word you write about the religious thing up here. And if you were sitting around the table in an editorial conference or whatever, and I wrote something and somebody went, oi, this is just, so that's where we are very, very finely tuned and very aware. But it's a similar thing, isn't it? It's what words trigger negative reactions, and so that's how. So believe me, people. I've had people say, "Oh, that was a racist article," whatever. Right? We might talk about unconscious stuff, but consciously, I don't have I would go to court to argue with that, right? Mm-hmm. But anything anybody's ever heard, any racial slurs anybody's ever heard, I've heard them all about religion up here, because people are equally horrible about it, And I think what I'm saying is people would be more aware in a Scottish newspaper about an article to do with sectarianism that was going to kick everything off than they might be about something where 100%. Race might come in it,
Do you know why, Bill? Do you know why? That's what I was saying about the people who aren't affected by it are the people who need to kind of be educated the most. The same way, actually, with the sectarianism, what you're saying, down where I live, that's not really a thing here. So
it's not a thing.
If people I was going to be talking about that, I wouldn't do it.
People down south say to me all the time, "Oh, my big dream in football is to go to a Rangers Celtic game. It's south, the atmosphere is phenomenal." And I say, "Listen, you can take my place, because I don't want to go there, because it's horrendous." And you know what they say? They say if you took out the sectarian thing and put in race, people say to me, "If you don't like it, don't go." If you don't like about it, you don't like it. Don't write
Yeah, they're
about it.
saying they're
If you
not
didn't
willing to
write
change. This is
yeah,
how it is here, so it's your
if
fault.
I didn't write it, and also, and something I've read and heard so much about race, they say up here, they'll say, if you didn't write about it, it wouldn't happen. Do you know what I mean? So there's parallels there, but we're finally tuned to that. I mean, when I speak to our guys in the paper in London, they're saying, no, what you wrote in that article just hit us so hard between the eyes because of the way things are tuned down here. And that's, again, it's different people's ears and different people's eyes react to different, different situations, different subjects.
I did an interview with Chris Uluma, and
Yeah.
he was talking to me about. I asked him what was it like being a black man in Scotland. I just asked him a simple question, and he said it was very tough. And he's alluding to a lot of the things that you're saying. That I suppose you're not product of your environment, but where you are based or where you're raised, you have different issues that might be going on there than somewhere else. And he said he found it tough. He did say he found it tough. I'm just looking at it like in terms of the unconscious bias. I think you're spot on there because the problem that we have is that, okay, you might not have gone, I'd like to think so. And like you said, you didn't, you haven't looked at the TV and thought, what the hell is he doing on there? I'm gonna have this out, but unconsciously you've ended up using language that can only be interpreted in a way that you were trying to make a point that you wasn't actually, that you're saying you wasn't, that wasn't even your point. So I think so much has to be done about the unconscious bias because that's what's led to this.
But if you look, yeah, absolutely. But again, if you look at, and I'm not defending that, I've given up even saying that I'm not defending the article, so I'm not defending the article. But a lot of people who have seen that article through you raising it have never heard of me, so their first impression of me is this guy. If I was then to say, look, I'll stick up online 10 articles I've written in the past, defending the right of the Windrush generation to stay here when the Tories wanted to send them home, and writing about Grenfell and homophobia and all this stuff. And people might say, actually, do you know what? Yeah, okay, this guy's okay. He's got this article pretty badly wrong. We still don't like it, but he's not that guy that we think he is. But then when I step back from that, that's my conscious first thought. But then you step back, you think, okay, let's think about the unconscious side. Right. So I grew up in Paisley, just outside Glasgow, pretty much all white town, not just the way it is. The only people who aren't white are people who own corner shops and restaurants in the 1970s, 80s, whatever, right? That's the way it is. You go to school, you learn about history from a British imperialist side, yeah? So somewhere in your head, this must all be there, right? This stuff, I can't see how you haven't absorbed that stuff somewhere. Now, since I've grown up and got into journalism, I've tried to educate myself on stuff that really matters, the stuff they don't teach you in school, right? But you're right. I think there's unconscious bias everywhere, isn't there? And it doesn't make you a bad person. I don't think it's anything to be particularly ashamed of, but it's there. I think if you're consciously coming out and saying, get that man off my television because he's black or whatever, then, just please leave the planet. But unconscious stuff is something that once we address it here, I hope to say, right, there's that unconscious thing. That's now a conscious thing. Let's put it to the side because we're not ever going to mention that again. You try and learn. Because I'm 58, man. You're never too old to learn.
I think, to sum it up, I just wanted to have this conversation because I thought it was important, even if there could have been things we might not agree on, which it turns out, there might we might be on the same page with a lot of things, which I know always goes back to how comes you wrote that, how come I get that, but away from that, that's why I think it's important to have these. People call them uncomfortable conversations. I don't. I think they're conversations that just have to be had so that change can happen. But they can be uncomfortable.
Yeah, I felt, to be honest, I felt comfortable about. I wanted to do this with you a fortnight ago, right? Because I thought your reaction was obviously at first a bit baffled, a bit incredulous, a bit angry. But to be honest, in your dealings with the paper, I think you've been really proportionate. I think you've been, more than generous about it, right? And I think it leads up to this. And I think this is a great conversation. I mean, I don't know. Other people might react to this when they see it and say, "Nah, I don't believe that guy. He's just saying what he has to say, whatever." But I hope you know that I've wanted to do this, and I really hope it takes us somewhere. And I hope it's not the last time we do something.
I do know you wanted to do this, and that's one thing I will say. People will draw their own conclusions from this and have their own opinion, and as long as they're not being abusive, they're entitled to that. And I will always say that. But Bill, I do know for a fact that Bill wanted to do this a lot sooner and make this happen, and I do know that, and that is what it is. I just hope that maybe it's something that we can speak about with the Sun later on in a different piece, because I agree that there's got to. I feel like we can only speak so much on what's happened in terms of the piece you wrote, because that's the bit that you're responsible for. You wrote it. I think the wider conversation which we went into, like I said, is way bigger than me and you could do. But I think it does the bit that we can control, or you can control. Like you said, it seems like when you next go to write a piece, having seen someone like me or another YouTuber, no matter what they look like, I think this experience will almost certainly change the way that you're gonna, without, like you said, pulling out of tackles, because that's not what I'm asking for, and that's what I think a lot of people aren't asking for that. So I can appreciate you coming to have this conversation. Obviously, I wish it wasn't under these circumstances, or I'd much rather have not had to have this conversation, if you get what I mean. But
I'm glad we did.
I think
I'm really glad we did.
Yeah, I appreciate you for coming on and addressing this and talking about it, and we'll see what good can come out of it from here. So guys, thanks for watching, and please leave your views and comments in the boxes below. And again, I'm not going to be tolerating you to come on and just slag Bill off and come with something constructive. I've managed to do that and get this done and fight for this to be done. And so just please come with something constructive instead of just coming on here and just putting a barrel of abuse. It's way too easy, and it's not helpful.